Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for this Mugs and Metals. What is everyone drinking today? I have a local one. I live in the Phoenix area. This is Scottsdale from Huss Brewing Company. So great to have that. What's everyone drinking today?
We got the barrel-aged Imperial Stout from Sierra Nevada. It's thick. It's good, though. Really good.
I have a barrel-aged drink here as well. It is, I home barrel-aged this blend of Rittenhouse rye and cognac.
Ambitious.
Sam Adams.
I have some wine.
Non-blue mountain Coors Light, the water of beer.
Where'd the blue go? You're drinking warm beer there, Bix.
It's in the mug.
I'll be the designated driver tonight. I'm doing Topo Chico tonight. So
Someone's got to get us home safe.
This is Dunagun, Kaiser, founder of Liberty and Finance. I'm now a licensed gold and silver dealer with Miles Franklin. Call me directly for the physical gold and silver that you need at the best price with personalized, private service from one of the oldest and best respected companies in the business. 30 years strong, A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, 0 complaints, licensed and bonded, insured delivery or vault storage or IRAs, excellent prices, privacy and confidentiality, pay by check, money order, ACH or wire, satisfaction guaranteed. Call me directly at 419-819-9209 or my associate at 310-562-6400 or email us at kaiser@milesfranklin.com.
I'm drinking filtered water from the refrigerator since I'm still getting over COVID, not back to my old evil ways yet.
Carrie, I didn't know you had it. I didn't know you caught it.
Carrie, I hope you get well soon.
Yeah, I'm over it, but hey, I'm here to talk about it. So
Good to see you, Vertical, man.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, it's so great to see you, Kerry, and so glad you're doing better.
Yeah,
Definitely our prayers with you continually. So
appreciate that.
Fantastic. Well, let's just jump right in here. I'd like to ask a question to Andy first, but first, if my brother Kaiser can introduce himself and also introduce Andy.
I'm Kaiser Johnson. I'm a voiceover actor, and I work in the precious metal space with Andy and Elijah and Dunagun and all of them. So let me introduce Andy. Andy Schectman is president and owner of Miles Franklin, a precious metals company that has eclipsed $5 billion in sales. Prior to starting Miles Franklin in 1989, Andy became a licensed financial planner specializing in Swiss franc investments and alternative investments.
As we start out 2021, we've talked about this on our last episode. We're seeing a continually changing political and financial climate. We've seen last week the break-in at the Capitol. We've seen just now the Trump impeachment again. How do precious metal sales really react to all this changing political climate and uncertainty?
Well, I'll answer that in a few ways. They say there's no bull market like a precious metals bull market because every other bull market appeals to our desire to make money. We would say that's our greed. But a precious metals bull market speaks to our concern and to our fear. And the higher the price goes and the scarier the world gets, only reinforces the fear. So one of the things that we find as a common denominator over the last year or two is very little, if any, selling back. People aren't selling. Very few are. Even the rhetoric that people are selling gold to buy Bitcoin, I'm not seeing it. I think people are concerned. It is being reinforced dramatically. People are rushing to buy precious metals because they're afraid. But we can boil it down and say, look, the Democrats control both sides of the House, the Congress, the House of Representatives, and the White House. What does that mean? That means more welfare. That means more laws. That means more spending, more debt, more regulation. I think they realize that the more that they spend, the more powerful they become. And with that comes more regulations, more subsidizing, and more bailouts. And so all of that's very, very, very bullish for precious metals, on top of the fact that the divisiveness, the dichotomy between red and blue, even friends and family who are experiencing that is really concerning, I think, a large segment of the people. And so we're seeing a wider swath of people walk into the market now, concerned, looking for a safe place to put their money. And so whether it be the political environment, whether it be what's happening with cryptocurrencies, people are awakening to the fact that things are not right. And that all speaks very well for precious metals. So I think that this 2021 in many ways may be more interesting, and remember that's a Chinese curse, than 2020 has been. And if I were to guess, I would say it probably will be.
Fantastic. Well, now we'll turn to Jerry Robinson. But first, let's introduce Jerry.
Jerry Robinson is an economist, veteran trend trader, best-selling author, investor, public speaker, trading coach, and founder of followthemoney.com. Jerry also has a passion for researching and teaching the Bible. Jerry's best-selling book, Bankruptcy of Our Nation, provides an eye-opening critique of America's debt-based economic system.
Jerry, we just heard about from Andy how really this environment right now that we're seeing politically and financially is very bullish for precious metals. What is your take? And can you explain for our viewers also, because I know you've stated recently that you see a commodities bull market in 2020. So kind of why do you see that this year?
Well, Andy spoke to it for sure. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's a fact that no U.S. president in history spent more taxpayer money than President Trump. And it's also a fact that, ironically, no U.S. president in history had less pushback on his reckless deficit spending from fiscal conservatives, air quote, than President Trump. So what's interesting is we had gold hit a brand new all-time high without the traditional barking and howling at the moon by fiscal conservatives. There's no Tea Party here. There's nobody in the streets complaining about the amount of money that Washington has spent over the last 4 years. I don't remember Mr. Trump denying any kind of stimulus check. I don't remember anybody denying their stimulus check who claimed to be a fiscal conservative. So yes, as we move into a Biden administration, we are going to see the fiscal conservatives who've been hiding under a rock for the last 4 years come out, and that's going to be good for gold. That's going to be good for silver. But remember, without the howling at the moon from these fiscal conservatives up until now, gold hit a brand new all-time high. So you have an all-time high for gold without the awareness and the howling at the moon, so to speak, by fiscal conservatives. So when Mr. Biden enters the office, when he's sitting in the Oval Office, I'm sure the Tea Party will revive. I'm sure the fiscal conservatives will suddenly notice that we have a $27 trillion national debt. I think they'll start to notice that we have a tremendous amount of record trade deficits, record current account deficits, or at least since 2008. And so I think it's very bullish for the future of gold, considering the political equation. It's just undoubted. But on top of that, your falling dollar, your destruction of the of money through the poor monetary policies, terrible monetary policies. I mean, corporate activity is being financed by the Fed through the bond purchases. So I would expect that the way, the new administration is going to bring out the fiscal conservatives from under the rocks they've been living under for the last 4 years. And we will begin to see an explosive move, I would assume, in gold and silver particularly, but in commodities generally, because of the continued decline of the dollar due to poor monetary policy. That's what I would see going forward.
Well, thank you, Jerry. We're going to pass it next to Marianne and Pamela Aden. Marianne and Pamela Aden are two of the most influential and well-known investment analysts, writers, and lecturers in the world. They are the co-editors and publishers of the Aden Forecast, a monthly investment newsletter which specializes in the U.S. and global stock markets, the precious metals and foreign exchange markets, as well as U.S. and international interest rates and bonds. The Adens are the directors of Aden Research based in San Jose, Costa Rica.
Awesome. Well, Pamela and Marianne, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you've stated that you do see inflation this year, inflation coming in. I know Jerry just kind of pointed that out, that we've seen so much money printing, so much debt, how, Trump has created more debt than, really any president in one term. And Marianne, if you could address this question about why you see inflation coming soon.
Well, the main reason why is because all of the money creation that has already happened. It's been, I'm sure you all know this, very unprecedented. Way back when you go back to the 2008 and the years after 2008 and all the QEs, everybody was all in an uproar and a tizzy about how much money was being created, how many bonds were being purchased by the Fed, the money printing. And really what's happened just in September actually, has just outstripped that, and very fast. With less than a year, we've had unprecedented jump that just soared, straight up move in the Fed's balance sheet. And the thing that's so interesting is that will all eventually create, that's the cause of inflation. And those that say, well, why hasn't it happened? And there's a lot of naysayers that are just kind of like, well, it's not happening. And in large part, COVID came along. They had to print even more money. And then with COVID, everyone's had to kind of stay in, spend less. People aren't eating out. They're not going on vacation. They're not doing a lot of things. So the velocity of money has been just, plunging. It's been going down for years. And so at some point, and there's a lot of reasons why we think that the recovery that follows COVID, once more people are vaccinated, once there's more, we get back to some sort of normal. It won't be just the way it used to be, but this pent-up demand is going to come out, and we're seeing it a bit in Costa Rica already. Some people just say, oh, forget it, I'm going. And they are coming on vacation regardless of COVID. But eventually that pent-up demand could result in spending and some kind of a recovery that's more robust than most people are thinking. And what's interesting about that is that we are seeing the base metals, copper, all those leading, precious metals too. They all tend to lead the economy, especially copper. And we're seeing that, and we don't think it's a coincidence that that's happening in anticipation of all the spending that's going to be coming from the new government and the infrastructure they're planning to do to create jobs and all that. So everything's kind of falling into place, and we'll see if it does happen that way, but that's what it looks like right now. And so eventually all that, and the more pent up it is, the more the inflation boom that follows could be quite robust, quite large.
If we could introduce Bix Weir.
Bix Weir has 30 years experience in the financial industry with various Fortune 500 companies. He's the creator of the Road to Ruta theory, and his commentary is published at roadtoruta.com. Bix has dedicated his efforts over the last 15 years to exposing the long-term manipulation of the gold and silver markets.
Now, Bix, we just heard from Marianne about the inflation because of a possible, an economic recovery. And also Pamela and Marianne have talked about in the past about this possible construction boom that could be bullish for silver because of more industrial demand. I know, Bix, you are incredibly bullish on silver. Can you explain for us why?
Well, I've been in it for a while, and I've heard all the pro-silver stories, pro-gold stories for over 30 years of why economically, fundamentally, the changing guard as far as the political scene. But nothing ever panned out the way it should. We go to war and gold gets slammed down. So I've spent the last 20 years figuring out who's doing it, why they're doing it, how they can control such a huge market. And it comes down to computers and derivatives on the comics. You can throw all the other stuff out the window. It's important in a freely traded market, but we don't have a freely traded market. Just Friday, they dumped 1.1 billion ounces of electronic silver on the market on Friday. 1.1 billion to drive the price of silver down. In a market like that, where the CFTC runs cover for these huge manipulators, which I think have been transferred from JP Morgan now to BlackRock and a company called Virtu Financial, there's no hope for silver to go up. Now, I'm not saying I'm not bullish silver. I'm absolutely 100% bullish on silver when it is freely traded, if it is ever freely traded. And we see Biden unbelievably is appointing the exact same regulators that Obama had during his entire 8 years. Janet Yellen is moving from the Fed to the Treasury. We got Gary Gensler, the ex-CFTC guy, moving to the SEC. And then this guy, what's his name, Dan Berkovich, who was the lawyer, supposedly, when we had the silver drive-by shooting in 2011 at the CFTC, is going to run the CFTC. And not only that, behind the scenes, there's 3 guys that have just been appointed from BlackRock that don't have to be approved by Congress. So the game is rigged. The game will continue to be rigged until the day it isn't. I'm invested in silver for the day it isn't, because I know it's going to jump from $25 to $600 to $800 to $2,000 to $20,000. Nobody knows the price of silver because it's been rigged way too long.
Moving to Pamela, what is your perspective on what is driving the price of silver? Why are you bullish on silver right now?
Silver, normally in the past, all the silver history, normally it has the same reaction. We call it the sleeping precious metal, because it'll do that for a long time, be absolutely boring, and then it just pops up, and then it goes on, and it never looks back, and it overpowers everything. And usually that ties in with a whole commodity move, like we saw in the 2000 leading up to 2008 and 2011 especially. And so we see silver in that mode today. It just started this summer, and it popped up after being very boring for several years. And now it's joined up, and copper is backing it up. And the natural resources in general are doing very well since October. And this is just the start of what we think is a major commodity move with the precious metals, influencing the goodness of silver and also the natural resources. So we'll have both of those powers powering up silver the most.
Thanks, Pamela. We're going to pass it now over to Kerry Lutz. Kerry is an entrepreneur and student of Austrian economics. In 2010, he founded the Financial Survival Network with the mission of helping people to prosper and thrive in the new economy.
We've been talking about gold, silver, inflation. I wanted to kind of take a step back, kind of where we started this changing climate, financially, politically. Your new slogan for the Financial Survival Network is now more than ever. We need to prepare now more than ever. We need the Financial Survival Network now more than ever. Why, in your perspective, do we need it now more than ever?
The answer is quite simple. When we look back over the past year, all of us, every person on this show right now, knew that a crash was coming, that it was going to be worse than 08 and 09. And while we didn't know that the purported cause, the pin that popped the balloon, that popped the bubble, was going to be COVID, it's almost irrelevant. It's almost like we needed an event for the globalists to rally around and to implement their plan, and COVID was it. I don't want to get into the politics. I think at this point, political calculations are irrelevant. They mean absolutely nothing. And if you don't believe it, well, hey, Trump, the capitalist, brought us closer to socialized medicine and free money, helicopter money from the Fed than any Democrat president prior to him. So we don't need to look at politics. Politics is not where this thing is going to be deciphered. I'll go to our good friend Jerry Robinson, follow the money. Just follow the money. And we're in the midst of an emerging new global economic system. And If you're not ready for it, you're going to be wiped out. If you're prepared, you can keep your head above water. And if you're a little bit proactive, you can kind of beat the market, but it's going to be very difficult. And that's why we say now more than ever, because the situation is more dire than it's ever been before. And we need to work together here, because the forces that are up against us are truly overwhelming. It really is David against Goliath. And I feel like we're out of slingshots here.
Thank you very much, Kerry. Next, we've got Dunagun Kaiser. Dunagun has hosted the Liberty and Finance Reluctant Preppers channels since 2013, where he brings together leading experts from the fields of precious metals, mining, finance, constitutional liberty, and preparedness to benefit a growing audience of nearly 50,000 passionate subscribers who have amassed nearly 8 million views.
Dunagun, one of the things I'd love to ask you right now is, we just heard from Kerry that it's more important now more than ever to be prepared. And that's really a lot about what your channel is about, is being prepared for crises. And the interesting thing is, though, that a lot of people don't trust the media. A lot of people don't trust what we're being told. And I've found wherever you look, whether it's the mainstream media or the independent media, there can often be stories that are just misleading or just false. So how do we kind of decipher all of that, decipher what's true? How can we prepare if we're not being told what is the truth?
Yeah, I was thinking about this as we headed towards this week in this discussion, and what gelled in my mind was like 3 principles that I'd like to toss out there. I guess one is kind of humorous if it weren't so upsetting, and that is that laws coming out of Washington always mean the opposite of what they are titled. That's one thing. The other is that you got to consider the source. You've talked about that, Elijah, in some of your writing and thinking recently, and I wanted to leverage some things that you said about that. And the third is trust your gut. I think it's Andy's quote from several interviews I did with him. So those are the 3 I'd like to focus on: is the laws mean the opposite of what they say they mean, the consider the source, and trust your gut. So I just had a little quote here from the book. Well, I'm not going to tell you what the book it is. Okay, here's a quiz. Here's a trivia question, guys, and for everybody in the audience. What book written in 1949 just hit the bestseller list again, which it hit in 2017, but it just hit it again?
Mein Kampf.
No? Well, maybe, but that's not the one that I've heard of.
1984.
Actually, that couldn't have been written in 1949, could it? Go ahead. 1984 by George Orwell. Absolutely. And here's just a couple quotes from that. Always eyes watching you and the voice enveloping you, asleep or awake, indoors or out of doors, in the bath or bed, no escape. Nothing was your own except a few cubic centimeters in your skull. Another one was, there was a truth and there was untruth. And if you clung to the truth, even against the whole world, you were not mad. And the famous quotes, the slogans of the party in that book: war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. So in the face of that, we had spoken with Daniel McAdams from the Ron Paul Institute, and he talked to us about if people only knew in our country that our media is more controlled than the Soviet era media was in Soviet Russia. Remember when we were growing up, remember growing up in school, they talked to us about propaganda in World War II in Germany. Oh, there's a minister of propaganda. And that's like, ooh, that's a bad thing that happens in other countries, faraway places, far from us. But now we had this phenomenon that came out over the last decade called fake news. I mean, when I was a kid, people weren't talking about fake news in the US, but that's been like a main theme of a lot of our public discourse over the past decade. And now you have to have fact checkers and people checking the fact checkers and debating over and the other thing that's brand new with big tech, of course, is that when you go to search out anything, you get presented with a result. This is the result of your search. This is the body of knowledge that's available. But what we don't realize is that is heavily influenced and guided and redacted and curated to create a result. And that's where I get to quote Jerry Robinson, because I had him on Reluctant Preppers about 7 years ago, and he was talking about, Jerry, I believe the way you put it was
propaganda. Yeah.
Propaganda, and you had an amazing metaphor you gave there about the anesthetist. You want to say that one again so I don't butcher it when I...
Yeah, propaganda basically numbs the patient so that the similar to an anesthesiologist, right? I forget exactly how I said it, but you captured it well.
Yeah, that the anesthesiologist shows up before the surgeon cuts.
That's
so
right.
You get conditioned through the bathing with the narrative to where you're thinking along certain lines and your attention is drawn in a certain direction. So I think a lot of us can, like, a lot of what I've just said is like, ugh. It's both disturbing and it rings true to what we've been experiencing in many ways, in heightened and much accelerated ways compared to when we were younger. Just a few examples of that. Laws always mean the opposite of what they said. Just a few examples here. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, HIPAA. We interviewed Dr. Elena George, an independent physician from Atlanta, Georgia, who's on radio, and she has a whole, she's a real champion for patients' rights. And she says, you know, if anything, it makes sure that the government has and the other hospitals and so on get your private information, not protecting it. We have the Uniting and Strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. You know what that one is? That's the Patriot Act of 2001. Did everybody feel united and strengthened? And then the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. So we could go on and on about patient protection. Actually, what got protected was big pharma, big hospitals of medicine, and the insurance companies who wrote the act. We have the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. Lucky we're protecting the consumers. That was 2010 when we didn't get told that we were just now unsecured creditors of the banks. We can get bailed in with our savings. And then we have, most recently, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, CARES Act of 2020. I know we're all experiencing lots of economic security these days. Go up and down your block and talk to people. So that's some examples of things the opposite of what they mean, what they say. And then the considering the source is something, Elijah, you had mentioned, that when you hear something rather unbelievable that happens, I mean, that's every week these days. You hear something unbelievable that's happening in our public life, and you go to search and find out what it is, and you see 12 websites that are all basically having the same paragraph copied and pasted, and it's expressing the same thing the same way, but nobody's quoting sources. Nobody's giving you a link to the original study. Nobody's giving you the name of the person in the official position who has the credentials that actually said this thing. So I'm overgeneralizing, but this is a principle you can use is to try to drill down and go, before I'm going to give my consent to just reacting, I'm going to investigate a bit to just see what is the source of this information. Consider the source and really make sure, because things can be presented to quickly as we get very busy and things are just coming at us so fast. Form a very quick opinion and, yep, I know what that meant. And make sure we check the source before we quickly jump to those conclusions. And then the last is trust your gut. Those of us who've been around a little bit and have had experience, have read some history, have talked to our parents, our grandparents. Some of us had the chance to meet, older relatives like that and get their stories. We start to know this isn't the first time around the barn. This isn't the first time we've heard this story. And if it feels wrong and it smells wrong and it doesn't pass, the body language doesn't match, trust your gut. Trust your gut. If you think that doesn't ring true with me, that doesn't square with my innate instinctual understanding of reality, trust your gut. So there's 3 principles just to get the discussion started.
I'd like to open it up to open discussion now. Kind of that topic of how do we trust the information in such this critical time? I think Dunagun did a great explanation of really ways, go to the original source. That's a really, really, really good idea. Any other thoughts on that? How do we trust the information out there?
I'd like to jump on that, but before I do, I just want to mention one thing, just expand upon Pamela's comment about silver and how it is needed in an industrialized world, a digital world, one that is experiencing growth in construction. Let's not forget what's going on in China right now, their Belt and Road Initiative. It's the most ambitious infrastructure program in human history ever. and it connects 65% of the world's population, 40% of the GDP, connecting Africa and China and most of Asia through roads and infrastructure and railways. And, this is an endeavor of unmitigated proportions. If you don't think silver is needed in a world that is increasingly digital and increasingly in need of silver, which last year we had a 330 million ounce deficit. I think when we talk about growth and growth moving in Asia, in particular in this respect, the need for silver and gold is really important, mostly silver in this case. I think the upside potential for silver is fantastic, and maybe, just maybe, that's why JP Morgan amassed 1 billion ounces of it while paying a $920 million fine. As far as the information is concerned, I would like to say that in 2020, for me, that was the most startling and disconcerting fact of 2020 is the stifling of information, websites being pulled down, people being shut off of YouTube, the censoring of people whom I respect so much. It's very frightening to me. In fact, I find it more concerning than just about anything. You have to hide in the corners to be able to speak the truth. Someone who I respect an awful lot, Sarah Westall, just had her YouTube or her whole website taken down from GoDaddy, just gone like that. And she's a patriot. She's a wonderful person. I know her very well. She's not conspiratorial. She's fantastic. And GoDaddy just yanked her completely, gone. So her YouTube channel is gone, and now her website is gone. And you start to wonder, where is journalistic integrity? Who's going to tell us the truth? And if you do tell the truth, are you afraid that your life's work is going to be taken down? So I think that's a very, very important fact. And we can talk about gold and silver and the benefits of owning precious metals and protecting yourself in an economy that's going crazy. But trying to tell people about it and to tell them in an honest, articulate, honorable way, even doing that, you run the risk of being pulled and labeled as a conspiratorialist and as a criminal of the state. I think it's very scary, and I think we all need to keep that in mind as we try to help as many people as we can. And I look around me and I see the common denominator between everyone here. Yeah, we all do what we do to make a living and pay the bills and put food on the table, but every one of us is doing something because we feel we're helping mankind. I go to bed every night feeling I did something good and that I help people. And in 30 years, I've never hurt anybody. And if I have, I'm really sorry. It was never done intentionally. I would just as soon retire before I would ever harm somebody. And I know that's true of all of you. And that's why I'm so honored to have you all here and to be associated with you all. What goes around comes around in life. Life is a big ball of karma. And if you've been doing this long enough, you know it's a difficult endeavor. It's a lonely existence. It's one thing, it's comforting to have us all here and to be able to talk amongst ourselves, people who are like-minded. Most people don't get it. Most people who you try to help, if what you say to them goes well, they're a genius. And if it goes bad, you're an idiot. And so the bottom line is that trying to disseminate information in an honest, forthright, honorable way, even if the truth is something people don't want to hear, is no longer accepted in this country. And people who have spent their lives trying to bring truth to the public are being yanked out. When you see the President of the United States, like him or hate him, his Twitter account pulled down, I find that to be as disgusting as anything I've ever heard. There's supposed to be a certain level of decorum and respect. And, you know, that's what this country was founded upon, the First Amendment, the right to be able to speak our mind. And now, even if you do it in an eloquent and humble way, if it doesn't meet the agenda of the people that are holding the plug, you're gone. So I'd like to say thank you to all of you, honestly, and I mean that, for standing up for what's right and doing what's right in the face of a growing sentiment of, craziness. So for what it's worth, to me, that was the most frightening thing of 2020, and it's continuing unabated here today, and it seems it's becoming more and more and more. If you're conservative, if you have libertarian or conservative values, you're considered a whack job, and now they're pulling the plug on you. I don't like it. I find it frightening, and I think more than anything, it's the most concerning thing for me that I've seen in 30 years in precious metals and in finance. I'd love to hear what you all have to say about that.
Andy, I'd like to comment on that. I mean, I agree with some of what you're saying, but I also think that just to temper it a little bit would be to say that, first of all, when it comes to the First Amendment, it says Congress shall make no law regarding free speech. It doesn't say Twitter. It didn't say Facebook. And so I can't go into a restaurant, and yell fire or walk in without a t-shirt. They'll throw me out. And so when you sign up for Twitter, you have to consent. You have to consent to becoming a member there or becoming a patron. And if you violate those rules, and by the way, I haven't seen anybody thrown off of Twitter for mentioning the national debt or talking about conservative values. I've seen them thrown off of Twitter for spreading lies. I've seen them thrown off of Twitter for peddling the things that Dunagun was just talking about. I think intelligent people tend to fall for propaganda the way Dunagun was bringing up easier because we all feel as if we need to know what's going on, and all of us have people who turn to us to have information. And I think those of us here are clearly responsible. I mean, we've had platforms for a long time. All of us care about the people that we serve, and we want to help them. We don't want to lie to them. We don't want to send them the wrong direction. We don't want to get them in trouble. We want to protect them. But I don't think that everybody acts in that same way, Andy. I think there's a lot of people who are lazy. I think there's a lot of people who will take something that is clearly a lie, that is peddled for political purposes, propaganda, literally, and they won't dive deep, and they'll spread it. And I think that some of these institutions, that's not good for their business. Just like me walking in without a shirt isn't good for the local Mexican restaurant. Peddling lies on social media is not necessarily something that these companies want to have to deal with. Now, are they inconsistent about it? Yes. Are they they're certainly not very accurate in the way they handle it. It's been a total disaster. Don't want to defend the social media companies. But one final comment is to say that the flexing of the muscles by these centralized players like Twitter and Facebook builds an enormous case for decentralization. In other words, the decentralized applications that are coming, what we call the dApps, that will be built on the top of things like Ethereum, blockchain, are going to be uncensorable. They already are. You can't censor them. So it may be good. It may not be good. So we will have Facebooks and Twitters that people cannot censor because they'll be built up top blockchains. And when we think about blockchain, for example, Bitcoin, for example, the best performing asset of the 21st century, up 41 million%. 41 million%. And we have other cryptocurrencies that are going up as well. And that's why we teach our students that, gold, silver, and some Bitcoin. I allocate 15% of my total investable assets to gold and silver and 5% of it to Bitcoin, about 3-to-1. So I more heavily weighted in gold and silver, but having exposure to all of those things because they're all anti-dollar. They're all opposed to the dollar. But that's my 2 cents. I don't want to hog the room, but that's just my 2 cents.
Can I comment really quick on, because this is, it's near and dear to my heart, being a patriot myself, being censored on YouTube for saying what I know to be the truth. And there are truths that are being covered up, a lot of them. To say that Twitter, Facebook, Google are private companies or have that ability to censor, I would challenge that and say the origins of all those large companies comes from the CIA. a company called In-Q-Tel, which funded the early days of Twitter, of Google, of Facebook. That, by definition, is us paying for these town squares. If they're going to be a town square, everyone must be able to speak in that town square, no matter how vile you think their language is. And that is something that is inbred in our Constitution. And to say that, well, now it's a public company, it still has certain things within it that you can't sue them. You can't sue Google for saying these lies or whatever lies there. You can't sue Twitter or Facebook. See, the problem lies in that so many truths that the mainstream media calls lies that I've investigated are actually real truths, and they are not allowed even to be discussed. It's kind of like Trump getting thrown under the bus right now, getting impeached for a speech, and you listen to the speech, and he didn't say anything wrong. As a matter of fact, his language was so much more tempered than everybody else in Congress on the left. So I disagree that these companies should be given that kind of power to censor at all. If they're going to be a public square where people can come to voice their opinion, all opinions must be heard, no matter how vile they are. And that's ingrained because we don't want to cover up truth. And that's more important than believing in a lie. If you cover up a truth, we are absolutely screwed for the rest of our existence.
I just want to state here, look, there's a certain social media platform under attack by Apple, by Facebook, by our digital overlords. You know, Zucker didn't just wake up the other day and say, let's get rid of this. What you have to realize is that our digital overlords, and that's what I call them, they are taking orders, whether it's from the route that Bix says, that they're actually were government propagated, and there's an argument to be made for that, for sure. They're not calling the shots here. They're being told what to do. And because I don't believe that Mark Zucker cares about anything other than getting the Facebook message out there and making Facebook the platform of choice, Instagram, whatever other applications they're using. I don't think he cares about any of this. He's told to care, and he does what he's told because they have their own overlords here. And we know all the stories. We know the conspiracy theories behind it. But the fact is that every major platform out there answers to somebody out there that we don't know who they are. And that's the other thing, the censorship, aside from it being repugnant to the spirit of America, the censorship is ingrained here. It is opaque, and you don't really know who's behind it. All you can do is kind of imagine and speculate, and then you're a conspiracy theorist, so nobody listens to you anyway.
They yanked Dr. Ron Paul's Facebook page down. This is a man who's done nothing but give to humanity his entire life. Amazing person. I've met him a few times, and you know, there's nothing that I would ever believe that he was saying that was a lie or inflammatory. Anyone who ever published or ran with the New York Times article on Hunter Biden's laptop had their YouTube channel taken down. So the real question, I think, to Bix's point is, what is the truth, and who is the arbitrator of that? Who is determining what is and what is not truthful? And so while I believe, you know, Jerry, what you're saying, there's a portion of that I believe that, yeah, it's not a platform to disseminate lies and hate, but who's to determine what is and what isn't truthful? And that's the point that I find to be most frightening, is that we can't even have an open discussion to determine that.
I think it's a really interesting point that you all bring up. And yeah, Andy, about kind of getting to that point, what is the truth? And I think one of the awesome things about this discussion that we all have is we can all really put our input in and get it from all different perspectives. And then the viewers can, you know, make their own decision in the matter and say, what do I really believe is the truth in this matter? And one of the things I wanted to address that Jerry brought up was really the innovation that's happening right now. He's talking about these huge corporations and the issues that are arising because they're so big. But then kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, what about the blockchain, right? What about cryptocurrency? And he mentioned how cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, was the best performing asset really ever. I'd love to turn it to the Aden sisters. With all your forecasting, with all your analysis of the markets, what do you make of what has happened to Bitcoin?
Yeah, no, it's incredible. It's just started in 2009. It started getting heating up a little bit from the start at 2012, and it's just gone, especially last December. It popped above the 2018 highs at 20,000 and it jumped up to 40-some thousand, coming back down. So it's wild. It's wild. It's like the kind of wild that we saw gold before. So I think it's just a very young and still growing very much. It'll be part of the future. But it's so volatile right now. And to go into it right now, I've already heard from other people, it's not that easy to get in and out of. If you want to get in it today or get out today, and the way it's moving, maybe it's not going to look as enticing as an investor. So we're watching it from the side. We don't think it's going to replace gold, although cryptocurrencies definitely have a future. And I think people are gearing to that. Not sure how it's going to all end up. And if Bitcoin stays as it is, it's kind of like the dot-com boom back in 2000, which one stays and which one goes. And in those days, Amazon was like just a bookstore. And look what it turned into, where some other ones that were so popular just don't exist anymore. So it's like, it's a new field. We're watching it closely. We haven't invested in it. And we don't think it'll replace gold, because just like we're saying, the fake news and who's right and who's wrong, we don't know, because the platforms that exist today in the digital world let us say what we want, and it makes people very hateful too, because they feel the right to be able to say something mean to somebody for no reason and invent things. Like you said, where's the source? So anyway, we think that Bitcoin is still in the Wild West sort of part of its growing. We think it needs to grow more, and we certainly will keep an eye on it and see if we buy it, if it falls down back to below 20,000, maybe so. Oh, but one more point I wanted to say is that to compare it to gold is very different. Physical gold. Now, paper gold, it kind of ends up being the same, but physical gold, I think there's nothing to replace that. Physical gold and physical silver. Even gold more so, because you can carry it across a border. Like, for example, this is a small example, but it was this year in COVID. We stayed home in Costa Rica. Then all of a sudden I think, oh, well, I can't buy my gold in the US now and bring it back because we can't go anywhere. And if I had to leave, what would I take with me? So you could take dollar bills, yes, right now in today's world. But the point is, you can take a gold coin, and it can be a lot of money in a small thing. You can take it across borders and without any problem. So I understand a little more how people are when they do have to flee a country and they have to take something that can fit in their pocket or fit in their somewhere you can hide. And so I understand that, and that's why it's important, if nothing else. And so yes, I don't think you'll ever replace it, but it's sure trying to.
I know, Bix, you have talked a lot about cryptocurrencies. You've done a lot of research in that area, but you are also very bullish precious metals, especially silver. I know you're very bullish silver, way more than gold. But I guess in the context that Pamela is talking about, that Bitcoin will not replace gold. Do you believe that? And if so, why are precious metals and cryptocurrencies necessary?
Well, I don't think there's a need to replace it. I think there's a place for both of them. But the discussion of taking gold out of the country as a positive for gold, Bitcoin blows that away. I mean, you can have your wallet address memorized in your head, go anywhere in the world and transfer $1 trillion. Well, not right now, but $1 billion, and no one would know it was done. So I love gold bugs discussing gold versus cryptos. But the longer I've been in it since 2000. I heard about it in 2011, bought my first Bitcoin in 2012. I understand what the blockchain is, what all these altcoins, the new iterations of Bitcoin are, and what they represent. They do represent things that we will be using in the future. To me, it's really easy to deal with because, I've been dealing with it since before it had exchanges and all that. So yes, I get that some people, it's hard to get their head around and hands around, but once you do it for a while, it's really easy. But the transportability is probably the biggest feather in the hat for cryptocurrencies, along with it's a third-party asset. And that's the beauty of gold. I talked to Jim Sinclair about this. The beauty of gold is gold has no third party that you have to rely on. It is a standalone asset. Same with Bitcoin. You're locked into the blockchain. You have your Bitcoin in your own possession. If you want to memorize your private key in your head, you can do that. And it's a beautiful thing. Yes, Bitcoin will have to fight with the banks and the establishment. And there's all kinds of crime. And they used to say that about gold. Now they say it about Bitcoin, all kinds of crime and criminals. If you really want to know who the criminals are, all you got to do is look at who's been fined the most and who's made the most transactions in money laundering and drug deals. It's the banks, obviously. So I get that people are starting. A lot of people have been in cryptos a long time and understand the volatility. A lot of that volatility is caused by those very same banks and the U.S. Treasury trying to support the U.S. dollar. But I think there's room for both. My biggest problem with gold is that we don't know how much there is in the world, and it's very scary when you dive down and really start researching how much gold is there, and you read books like Gold Warriors by Peggy and Sterling Seagrave about Yamashita's gold. You're like, wait. They're talking about 300,000 tons of gold, and the GFS and those guys are telling you there's only 200,000 tons that have ever been mined. And there's a lot of stories, but a lot of stories with facts behind them. So I think that's the biggest problem going forward with gold is nobody really knows how much gold there is, and obviously the manipulation on the comics. So it's a toss-up. That's why I like both of them. I like precious metals and I like cryptos because I think they'll both have places for us for investment purposes and usefulness, especially silver in the industrial side of a high-tech world. So that's my take.
I would love if Bix could explain a little bit more to everyone about, like he was saying, they don't know how much gold is there. Explain how Bitcoin fits in as, say, a safe haven asset. He said, we all know it's relatively new, but since he does have so much experience with it, I would love to hear more.
Sure. I would say as a safe haven asset, there's plenty of cryptos out there. Bitcoin is fixed at 21 million coins. Only 21 million coins will ever be mined. It's a scarcity issue. They call it deflationary. I call it a slower inflationary because as they mine it, over every 4 years, it gets halved. It's a standalone asset is the biggest thing. It doesn't rely on banks being in business. It doesn't rely on anything else other than the internet up and running. Now, people who say, well, what if the internet goes down? Well, the way our society is set up today, if the internet goes down for more than a couple days, we're pretty much in Mad Max world. And everything is based on it now. And if the internet comes back up, voila, your Bitcoin is back there. It's the exactly same place as it was. So as far as scarcity goes, it is digital scarcity, which basically means mathematical scarcity. As long as it's open chain block, open source code, the blockchain is immutable. You can't change what people have. And some blockchains have done that, have changed it and quickly lose credibility. It has all those characteristics of gold, other than the 2,000 years of monetary history. I think in 2,000 years, it will have that. And I have no doubt that Bitcoin will be around for a very long time along with gold. And that has been proven out. People have been saying, I think it's 150 times that mainstream media has said Bitcoin's dead, it's dead. Every time it drops 70, 80%, they say it's over. And then in the meantime, what's happening to our current system is they're printing more and more fiat money, just unbelievable amounts. And you're right when you said Trump printed more money than anybody else in the world, any other president, but so has every president. So and I'll guarantee you that Biden will print more than Trump. And then the next president will print more than Biden. That's part of fiat money. You have to continue to print more because it's a debt-based money. You got to print more and more and more. And it's the only solution to every single problem they have, print more money. So
Exactly.
with Bitcoin, it's locked at 21 million and it will never change from that. So yeah, you can invent different coins, just like there's different metals. There's silver, there's copper, there's tin, there's platinum, there's Bitcoin, there's Ethereum, there's Litecoin, there's Digibyte, things like that.
Bix, do we know how many coins
May
are
I ask a question?
Sure.
I just wanted to ask Bix, how do you know they will never change that from the 21 million?
Well, who is they?
Yeah,
That's
who is
what
that?
I'd like to know.
Well, it would be, there is no centralization in Bitcoin. There's no one to make that decision. It would take everybody, all the miners in the network, everybody who's involved in Bitcoin to make that decision. I'm not saying it's not possible. It is possible. There's a core developers who think they have that kind of power, but they really don't. So yeah, it really, anybody can start mining Bitcoin, and people are worried about the Chinese because there's a high concentration of miners in China. There's nothing stopping the United States of America from opening the biggest Bitcoin mining farm in the world tomorrow. Nothing stopping. It's open source. Anybody can mine Bitcoin at any time. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's an amazing invention that came along at just the right time for the crashing of the old system and the implementation kind of running in parallel of something new.
And just one more question. Do you feel that, knowing what you know and your experience, and you obviously know, much more about Bitcoin than certainly we do, but do you feel that it is truly an equal competitor to gold and silver?
Yeah, yes, I do. And because in some ways it's better. Obviously, transportability, it's much better than gold and silver as far as transportability. As far as limited supply, we don't know how much gold there is. We don't know how much silver is. And we could mine gold on an asteroid. We can mine gold deep in the ocean. They could have a lot of secret gold, like I believe they do. So we don't know. So how do you value something that has an unlimited or unknown quantity? And they could find the largest gold mine in the world tomorrow and say, oh my God, we just tripled the supply of gold tomorrow. Things like that. Bitcoin, you can't do that. You got 21 million. The last Bitcoin will be mined in 2130 something. So, but I'm not saying gold's bad. Gold has that amazing history.
No. I just had one more question. It's like, what about the history?
It's beautiful. And I'll tell you, the gold history is an amazing history. It's always been the fallback asset when fiat money fails. And then gold fails too because people abuse it in a monetary system. As we've seen, from coin clipping to you name it, they abuse gold.
Yes.
That's why you end up going off a gold standard. The beauty of Bitcoin is it's never been thrashed. It's never lost. It's never been a currency that didn't work anymore. At least not yet. I know it's only 10 years, but gold has over the, obviously 2,000 years of monetary history for gold, it has not worked at some certain times. It hasn't worked. Our government banned gold in 1971. Pretty much all governments banned gold, before that. It didn't work as money. It worked as a store of value. Absolutely. I don't see gold coming back as money unless a lot of these countries give up their desire to print as much money as possible.
Yeah, that's one thing, Bix, you said when you talk about gold failing, what I'm hearing you say is that people, systems, governments, individuals abandoning gold, lying about what they're calling gold, debasing their currency relative to gold. All those things fail. I never heard you say anything about gold itself failing. That's what I'm wondering about is that because you talk about all these countries that are debasing their currencies, these fiats are failing. So that's like blaming it on gold is kind of a turnabout.
Well, yeah, I didn't mean gold failed as obviously it's still a store of value. I don't see it being money in a high-tech future. Money
currency, okay.
As in a currency, yeah. As a store of value, I think it'll stay a store of value. I just don't know what it's worth because of all this hidden gold.
If I can just jump in for a minute, Bix, I haven't met anybody. Well, I've met a few people who've bought in 2012. I bought in 2012 as well at the behest of Trace Mayer, who did he tell you about it as well?
He did back in the day.
Really
was right
smart guy. He's a smart guy. He in fact, we had a chance to meet with at Kerry Lutz's Liberty Mastermind Symposium that we did, and had a chance to meet him. Well, but so I got invested in 2012, and again, sharing all of that with our students. I mean, I think this is one of the things that is really key. 900 Bitcoin are mined each day. That's it. PayPal's buying many of them. Grayscale, who is running the big kind of fund for Bitcoin, is buying a lot of it. So the demand is outrageous. The institutional flows are just now beginning. Guys like Paul Tudor Jones and some of the big funds are beginning to really accumulate Bitcoin. So we see a big future, a bright future ahead. And when you look at the actual data, it appears that based on the best that I can analyze the data, it appears that less than 1 million actual holders actually hold Bitcoin. So we're talking about a very, very small concentrated number of people, considering how big the brand is. I mean, Bitcoin has a brand that's like Coca-Cola. I mean, everybody has heard, or, in 10, 12 years. So it's been a real fast adoption, but yet not at the retail level, and certainly not at the institutional level. It's just been kind of general awareness. But earlier when we brought up cryptocurrency and decentralization, what I was driving at particularly was more of the Ethereum kind of layer that decentralized applications can exist on. So right now we live in this centralized world, and Bitcoin, when the white paper was released on October 31st, the same day that the 95 Theses were nailed to the Wittenberg Church, starting the Protestant Reformation, kind of coinciding with that same date, the Bitcoin white paper, in essence, attacked the Federal Reserve and said, because there is no restraint upon the money supply, here's a finite monetary system, and it's self-authenticating. And the invention of Ethereum now, which I think is going to be is already clearly the winner when it comes to what things are going to be built upon.
Maybe
is really going to probably have an incredible year this year. It's the dark horse. It's really what all corporations are building atop of. Bitcoin's kind of like the gold that you throw in the safe. Ethereum is what you build upon. It's what all the applications are going to be. And corporations are moving heavily into Ethereum, even like DCTT, which controls a lot of the financial settlements for the stock exchanges. They're already kind of operating their own Ethereum project known as the Whitney Project, and they're using Chainlink as the oracle to deliver, or to basically operate with taking equities and moving them to the blockchain. So there's a lot of opportunity here, and it's still very, very early. I mean, I think it was Marianne or maybe Pamela who said it's like the Wild West. I mean, it really is still very, very early. It's not late.
Right.
Very early.
And to that point, really kind of going full circle here, we're in a changing world. We're in a changing political, financial system. And one of the big things that is changing is this whole cryptocurrency space. And it'll be great to, kind of circle back with more mugs and medals to really see how this whole story is panning out. It was awesome to have you guys all on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us today. How was everyone's drink? Mine was quite good. Again, I chose a light beer. I think I love light beers, but I think I'm gonna switch it up next time. I'm gonna do a dark beer next time. So
Sounds good.
Mine was great. Enjoyed it a lot.
And thank you very much. It was a
I
great
would like to thank you all for being a part. You're all awesome. Thank you for spending some time. All of your insight is fantastic. Bix, I love the conversation on cryptocurrencies. Your insight on it is fantastic, Jerry, and the Aden sisters. And I just want to thank you all so much for sharing and sharing your insight. It's so important to get this information out there to the people. And I look forward to doing it again. Elijah, thank you so very much for taking part in this. And Dunagun and Kaiser and Kerry, thank you very much. And let's keep doing this. Let's do it again real soon.
Yes,
thank you
I
very much.
agree.
We enjoyed it.
It's been wonderful. I've really enjoyed it. And it's a pleasure to be on this panel with all of you. And I thought it was fascinating and I love it. And it's so nice that we can all talk and have a drink at the same time. And it's great.
Absolutely.
Yes, we enjoyed it very much.
It was an honor. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.
cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Everyone stay well.
Thanks.
If you've decided that now is the right time for you to protect your family's financial future by acquiring physical precious metals, gold and silver, I'm delighted to let you know that I have now become a licensed dealer's representative for Miles Franklin, one of the oldest and most trusted names in bullion dealerships. And we can provide you with physical delivery to your personal possession or to professional vault storage or precious metals IRAs. Just email me at libertyandfinance@protonmail.com, and please include your name and phone number in your email to libertyandfinance@protonmail.com. We'll get right back with you and find out how to best meet your needs so that you can either begin or increase your acquisition of physical precious metals now and protect your family's future starting today.